Welcome everybody to another OpenShift Commons. Today we are here with a few product managers from the Watson AIOps team at IBM. Really excited to talk about AIOps and multi-cloud management today. And please stick around for the Q&A. Tushar Katarki, he's a senior product manager over the core OpenShift platform. And I think a lot of you already know how involved he is in AI. So it'll be an interesting discussion, and please get your questions ready. Morgan, please take it away.
Sure, and thank you, Corinna. Morgan Timpson, product management for Watson AIOps. Really excited to speak with everybody today. Really excited to tackle some of your questions with Tushar and James Moore from the Watson AIOps product management team as well. I'm going to spend about 15-20 minutes giving you kind of a quick overview, doing a quick demo, and then really looking forward to those questions. Let's dive in. Usual boilerplate on our product and roadmap here. Wanted to open up the conversation on AIOps by spending a moment just kind of grounding us in a shared reality maybe. So over the last couple of years, couple of decades really, the delivery and support model for software and how we think about supporting technology has really evolved a lot. We've transitioned from this more traditional model where information, where data, where infrastructure, where services are very siloed to a model that's more heavily integrated, more API-based use of microservices. And that kind of cloud native approach has led to a cascade of other changes in how we think about how we support those services. For example, thinking about SLAs by service instead of by a particular technology. New concepts like risk budget are evolving, and the skills and kind of talents necessary to support this are pointed at new kind of evolving KPIs. So instead of just thinking about availability and uptime, we're thinking about availability still and reliability. We're also thinking about quality, or thinking about how a digital experience, for example, might be impacted by a lack of support or challenges to the technology. And this kind of secular shift in how we think about technology and software has greatly impacted how kind of the IBM team has thought about how we're going to bring AI to IT. I don't want to go through every single one of these bullets here for us, but I just wanted to call out kind of some of the principles we're using to think about how AI can be really valuable for IT. So one that I think is particularly salient in the AIOps universe is this concept called ChatOps. So I think something that a lot of Red Hat users, I know a lot of folks at IBM can appreciate, is that here in 2020, we've got far too many dashboards. There's always another tool that we need to pop out of our work to examine, get the information from. We're trying to do with some of our new work around DevSecOps, around bringing AI to IT, is weaving in information and insights into the actual workflows that we're working on day to day, rather than forcing us to incorporate a new tool, get trained on a new system, and kind of break ourselves out of our productivity. Up next, and a big part of the great work that we do, launching this product on Red Hat OpenShift, is embrace this open ecosystem of tools. The IT operations space where AIOps resides is incredibly fragmented, and the way to succeed there for all concerned is by embracing open, integrating in a very thoughtful way, and being able to collaborate, leveraging the synergies that come from being open. And then finally, kind of as the name might imply, AI for IT is all about bringing AI to the core of how we think about ways to add value, to automate complexity out of workflows, and how to bring kind of clarity and prioritization to work into the kinds of impacts we're driving for our clients. So I want to spend a moment here just kind of laying out what AIOps is in light of a kind of larger shift in terms of how we think about DevSecOps. So AIOps, and sometimes you hear this term get mixed up with other concepts like MLOps or ITOps. AIOps, it's a nice jargony term. We're basically saying here's we're applying AI to IT operations or to the support systems and teams, kind of social infrastructure, if you will, that support the technologies, the applications, the digital experiences that we all as consumers and employees touch every day. And what makes it kind of step function different than prior approaches is we're bringing together different types of data. For example, structured data, which is a bit more traditional, unstructured data, things like tickets, logs, chat logs, social media posts, those kinds of data. We're bringing them all together with AI, drawing correlations and insights across those different data sources. And we're using AI to improve both our ability to get visibility into our technology and then to resolve issues within that technology. So not just understanding getting a better understanding of a particular outage or IT incident, but we're able to use AI to get more context, collaborate more effectively, and ultimately repair and automate future repair of incidents, of challenges, and do so continuously improving over time, kind of kicking that flywheel forward. And the way we've seen our clients interact with AIOps, both our clients and I'll say also some of the industry analysts have seen this kind of pattern too, is something we've kind of seen it as like an AIOps journey. So our clients typically start off by trying to get kind of a ground truth sense, trying to really understand their IT infrastructure, what girds their applications, what supports those digital experiences. They're trying to get together a ground truth, and they'll do that typically through event and metric monitoring tools that give them kind of a forward-looking sense of what is kind of about to happen. Once they've established that ground truth, our clients typically move on to this next step about anticipating what could happen next, being a bit more proactive. And the way that comes about is through using more sophisticated tools, more sophisticated analytics, applying technologies like topology to get a more rich sense of kind of how that understanding, how that ground truth is related to different pieces of itself, applying AI to understand and get a more rich sense of AI or machine learning to get a more rich sense of kind of what's coming down the pike. And then finally, with that sophisticated understanding and that ground truth, then applying automation to take some of the pain, some of the effort, kind of bring out some of the synergies, using some of that intelligence and insight that's been kind of teed up in the prior steps. And that I think kind of tees up how we're thinking about this new product that we just launched earlier this summer, called Watson AIOps. And this is a new product that we've built on IBM Cloud Packs, which are built on Red Hat OpenShift. And we've been really thrilled to work with Red Hat on kind of making this fantastic experience across the IBM Red Hat teams here. So to briefly kind of lay out what we're doing in AIOps with this new offering called Watson AIOps, we're really focused on some of the key capabilities and technologies that distinguish AIOps from prior approaches to the IT operations domain. So we're, for example, thinking about how we can get a more sophisticated understanding of hidden insights. So using, for example, unstructured data, natural language processing techniques, which IBM's done some really innovative work in, to reveal new anomalies. A lot of our clients that we worked with in POCs or in our beta period were really impressed, and I'll talk about them a little bit more later. We're really blown away by our ability to kind of shed a light on some of the kind of dark technical debt that they had, that traditional approaches, kind of simple keyword search and other tools were not able to kind of shed a light on. Another piece of this is connecting the dots across different data silos. So as I mentioned earlier, we've seen this kind of paradigm shift where parts of organizations or parts of digital and technology infrastructure were extremely siloed, and that worked for a time. Now we're seeing with new approaches, new techniques, an end to these silos. Red Hat OpenShift has been really valuable on that front as well. We're taking that same kind of logic and we're applying it to the IT operations domain. A lot of traditional approaches to IT operations involve getting very sophisticated tools and technologies to analyze a particular data type. and getting a sophisticated view on that particular data type. Maybe it's your events, maybe it's your metrics, maybe it's your logs. That's valuable. But it has a kind of upper limit or diminishing return because you're not able to draw that against other data sources. And what typically happens in an incident or in an IT-related crisis is you've got a particularly savvy SRE or subject matter expert who's drawing insights from across these different dashboards and tools to kind of connect the dots and figure it out. And that works ad hoc, but that's not a systematic approach. And there's a lot of opportunity for AI and machine learning to help kind of take out the risk and save some of the pain for the engineers involved. And so what we're doing with Watson AIOps is exactly that. We're drawing insights, signals across these different data sources, and we're pulling them together into concrete recommendations, insights, alerts, and notifications for those engineering teams so they not only have a sense of something's wrong, but they have a sense of how that issue or incident is expressing itself across all these different tools. And then finally, we're surfacing that those insights, those next best actions, those other tools and information where teams work today in what I kind of teed up earlier, that ChatOps collaboration experience. So Watson AIOps integrates with tools like Slack, like Microsoft Teams and other solutions where you're able to kind of triage an incident in real time, collaborate on a particular service that's gone down. And that's been really valuable for a lot of our clients, not just having the information about a particular incident kind of grouped together and packaged effectively, but having that land where teams are already huddling, scrumming, and occasionally sharing GIFs. So to kind of underline the experience for the user, we kind of sat down with some of the SREs at IBM to get a sense of kind of their day-to-day life before and after using AIOps, and it's been personally a very interesting journey. So on the left-hand side, almost comical, the number of different screens and tools that engineers have had to navigate through, whether it's Slack, emails, PagerDuty, event and monitoring management tools, third-party log management tools, all these different systems to get a basic understanding of the problem. Whereas after AIOps, what we're instead able to do is provide kind of one quick sit rep in that Slack experience where they're able to quickly triage the information necessary to respond and react to a given incident. And I'm going to do a quick little demo later to help get us all a flavor of that. So to give a quick overview on Watson AIOps itself, and I think I teed up a little bit of this earlier, but we're taking these different data sources across events and alerts, metrics, we're using topology data, and then we're using some of the unstructured data I mentioned earlier, which is a bit more novel, things like logs or things like tickets. We're bringing that together in Watson AIOps, and we're able to use that to push out these insights and content to that ChatOps experience where teams are able to kind of scrum and react on it much more quickly. We're also able to feed it out into dashboards or other tools so that parties maybe upline in the management stack or other tools are able to leverage those insights as well. So we're trying to, as a part of that open approach, feed information across the different stakeholders that are involved here, but also play nice on the technology side. And part of the approach with Watson AIOps is we're including a number of technologies and capabilities that IBM offers on events and metrics and topology to help provide some of that rich understanding. Topology, for example, has been really valuable for a lot of our clients in getting a sense of blast radius using Watson AIOps to understand not just kind of what service is down or at risk in this particular moment, but what further services, what kind of second order impact is at risk because a first service is down. And just to underline some of the work we're doing on the open side, we're on the kind of data integration side. We're streaming in all these different data sources. We've got about 150 different sources of integration that we're using for data feeding Watson AIOps. And these include a number of kind of recognized players in the IT operations space. We've also got a number of great IBM partners, companies like Sysdig, Humio, Hazelcast, Turbonomic, and others who do really great work and have been fantastic partners to us. And then on kind of that chat ops layer, companies like Slack, Microsoft Teams, Mattermost, and others, areas where our clients' IT operations teams or SRE users are able to collaborate around the insights that we can feed them with Watson AIOps. So just a couple of quick kind of client reactions here, stories I'd love to tell here. Kaija Bank has been using Watson AIOps. They were one of our early beta clients, and they've been a fantastic partner and have given us a lot of great feedback to work off of. One of the really kind of valuable insights that they've had in working with Watson AIOps was around our ability to kind of group alerts and incidents. In prior kind of pre-Watson AIOps, they were getting floods of alerts and not always being able to detect the actual problem because of some of that flooding. And so our ability to kind of group and organize events and provide much better signal to noise has been really valuable to teams on the ground and to CIOs looking to kind of benefit from that information. And then Dynata, really interesting story there. They were using more traditional methods to get underneath a kind of long-standing technical issue. By using Watson AIOps, and in particular, some of our more differentiated unstructured data approaches, we were able to identify long-standing issues that that they were able to address by kind of updating their security posture. But it was very interesting in that we were able to identify these anomalies using that new unstructured data approach, whereas they had been kind of using a more traditional approach. So kind of two different stories where we're using AI, we're using some of the unstructured data to provide a more rich experience to the teams and to the organizations, using AIOps to deliver more reliable experiences to their end users and clients. So just to briefly speak to impact, we've seen a lot of great feedback in some of our early work, both cost savings, but I think what's really more resonant for me is the idea around kind of freeing up bandwidth for the organization, freeing up time, taking time out of the workflow. One of the CIOs we spoke to in our kind of early interviews around the product last year mentioned that about 70% of their organization's bandwidth was focused on just kind of keeping the lights on, keeping the trains running on time. And a huge value that we could bring to bear for them was in accelerating some of these workflows and freeing up more organizational bandwidth to tackle the next initiative, so that the IT organization could be a source of innovation and kind of help move the ball forward for the business, rather than kind of being in the sidecar or the back seat, reacting to changes being pushed from the CXO or the line of business. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to switch to the demo, and then I'd love to get some of the questions, thoughts, and feedback that folks have here. So I'm going to quickly swap over, and I've now got my Slack user interface up here. As I mentioned during kind of the pitch, we use Slack as kind of our chat ops collaboration experience. What I've got up on screen is an example of an alert from Watson AIOps. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here just kind of talking through what you're seeing in this alert and giving a little bit of context on kind of how you as an SRE or you as a IT operations engineer might think about or react to and use this information. And again, the idea here is there's a lot of complexity and there's a lot of other tools that you could be using to get to this same consolidated, summarized set of information. And by packaging it in this way and using AI to achieve that kind of simplification, we're saving a lot of time in the workflow, we're saving a lot of complexity, and we're kind of taking risk out through simplification. So to dive in very briefly here, we've got a title and description. These are using natural language processing to kind of create quick kind of name tags for these, allow them to be searchable later. This tells me that as the SRE underneath the service, that the ticket info service is down. There are a couple of different anomalies and alerts associated with that error. It also gives me a bit of information on just in this description. It lets me know that it's open, gives me a sense of date and time, and using my organization's definitions for severity, it classifies it with severity. Further down below, kind of getting past that top line information, I've got information on localization and blast radius, and I've got information on kind of more information on events and alerts that are related. So if I want to get additional context, I can. So I'm now going to go through each of these kind of deep dive sections in more detail. So like localization and blast radius, this is the synergy I mentioned with the topology data that I called out earlier. What this allows me to see is not just the kind of service itself that's down, but the deployments, the related pods. If I want more information on additional services that are downstream, I can do so. And the value to me, again, as an engineer trying to support this product and try to ultimately resolve this issue, is I can see what's downstream. I can see what's at risk if this outage is allowed to continue. And in turn, this helps me triage my response to this incident. Up next, we've got a bit more information on related events. So what I'm able to do here is see a bit more information on some of the different tags associated with this event. What's really valuable here is that what this is actually doing is bringing together tons of different anomalies across different tools. So I don't need to go to 6 different tools, dashboards, services to get more information and to kind of investigate. Rather, I can get a high level summary of the problem, the related services, and I can use that information to make decisions quickly in triage. If I do want more information, all I have to do is click through these links and that'll give me more information from each of the related tools. So this hooks up with other parts of the Watson AIOps stack, as well as PagerDuty, as well as LogDNA, other both IBM and third-party products that we have integrated with Watson AIOps. So that gives me the ability to investigate localization and blast radius, give me context on what could go down and kind of how this is located within my technology stack. This is all kind of really helpful in giving me as an engineer, or me as kind of an incident manager, really valuable context. What I'd now like to do, having gotten some of this context, having gotten some of this information, is be able to take action and react to this and ultimately address the issue. We've got this, we're able to kind of pull up tickets from prior scenarios. We use the information about this particular incident to pull out tickets specifically that were related and were addressed successfully. We're able to then use those tickets to guide us on resolution to help address this problem. So I see this looks a lot like the problem we're experiencing today. And if I want to investigate more, again, I can just go into ServiceNow and examine the ticket more closely. So I decided to add it to my Slack story. So it's all in one place for my other teammates to look at. So now I've got this automated reply from the service. Again, this is all nicely packaged for me as the incident commander or for other engineers on my team. What I can do now is I've identified an action. I've got a good understanding of the incident itself. The next step is for me to kind of acknowledge this and triage this out to my teams and my organization. So what I'm going to do now is create a new incident channel for my team to huddle on. If I want to instead add it to an existing channel, maybe this is a service that's been a bit of a problem. We have a dedicated channel for it. Or if I want to keep it in my current channel, I can do that. This tends to be kind of a cultural issue more than anything. I can also adjust the status. By virtue of me working on it, I'm going to keep it in progress. But let's say I'm trying to delegate this to somebody else. I want to tag it as just open, or I've decided that this issue is a nothing burger, it's closed. I can name the channel. I can then make it private. And let's say I want to tag, I can make it private or public if I want others to be able to join ad hoc, or if there's maybe kind of an organizational culture of openness around Slack, which is something a lot of our clients have really embraced. The default is to kind of keep it open. Maybe sometimes keep it private if it's a sensitive service. And then finally, I'm able to tag in other users. So perhaps I want to tag in my friend James, because I know he's an amazing SME on this service, who will help us address this issue, not just this time, but help us deploy a perpetual fix. And then finally, I can use this notes section to just drop in additional color or kind of a game plan on how we want to handle this, particularly if we're juggling other incidents at the moment. So I can acknowledge this and kind of go from there. So that's kind of a quick demo of Watson AIOps. Again, just to kind of play back what you saw, kind of this quick summarization of an incident. We've gotten together enough information to make some quick decisions, tag in the right SMEs, understand what services or tools are downstream. I've got easy access to additional information if I want to investigate, get a more rich understanding. This allows me as an incident commander, as an SRE, as an IT operations manager, make some quick decisions as we try to get the service back online quickly. And to kind of some of my earlier points, this is pulling time out of the workflow. This is automating a lot of activity in the workflow. This is using AI to bring kind of simplicity and clarity to my team's efforts. So I'm going to swap back to the deck and kind of close here. Really enjoyed the conversation today. Really looking forward to some of the questions, happy to dig in on any questions around how we're applying AI here, the models, chat offs, anything else. Yeah, I'll put the mic down. Open to questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Morgan. That was a great demo, and thank you so much for the presentation and walking through Watson AIOps. Jumping right in, we have a lot of questions in the chat. First, wanted to ask, since we're relating this back to OpenShift and the platform, how are you deploying your Watson AIOps? Is that through, I'll let you go ahead.
Sure. And James or
yeah, I can chime in, Morgan. On the as far as the OpenShift support, it supports version 4.5, if I'm not mistaken. I was checking on that while Morgan was talking, and then it does leverage the operators for the majority of what is involved here. There's some most of what Morgan referred to is cloud native, containerized, so it leverages the operators. I'm not familiar with. I was just checking on Open Data Hub, so we may have to get back to you on that one. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Morgan.
I'm not, I'm afraid.
Okay. And then there's some
yeah. So let me just quickly comment on that real quick. I mean, I don't know if there's a direct connection, but certainly the Open Data Hub in general really is the reference architecture community of how to do AI and machine learning on top of it. And so it's not very specific to AIOps per se, but if you were to build a AIOps workflows on top of OpenShift, then you could use something like Open Data Hub and the tools and the reference architecture that it provides to do that. So that's how I would answer that, what Open Data Hub is.
Thanks, Tushar.
And just to add to that, finally, Open Data Hub, there's an instance of Open Data Hub within Red Hat called Data Hub, and that provides some of the, as the name suggests, it aggregates some data that we collect and provides some services for AIOps within Red Hat. So that's how the tie-in is to AIOps.
And, for the OpenShift product managers, we look at the Data Hub a lot for gathering our insights, right, Tushar?
That's correct, yes, yeah. And for example, Morgan was talking about, he was showing the demo, for example, as an SRE, how do I do some log analysis? So one of the things, for example, that Data Hub internally collects is all the CI/CD test logs, and then you could apply data and analytics tools on top of that, get some insights, and then use that to improve product experiences and products. So that's kind of one way how we are using the data hub internally.
Thanks, Tushar. Because we have the slide up, I wanted to mention the IBM Cloud Pack for Multi-Cloud Management. Do you also tie back into the Cloud Pack for data? How do those two line up?
That's a great question. So as a kind of a ground truth, the IBM Cloud Packs are kind of different tools focusing on kind of different parts of the cloud experience that are built on Red Hat OpenShift. And Watson AIOps is built as basically an extension of, or kind of an add-on to Cloud Pack for Data today. And we're building it, we're also making it available as a extension to Cloud Pack for Multicloud Management. These are two different Cloud Packs focused on kind of two different sets of problems. And so there's kind of a synergy with both. Cloud Pack for Data is really focused on, as the name might imply, really focused on providing tools and the kind of base infrastructure to allow teams to really effectively work with, manage, and virtualize data. Cloud Pack for Multi-Cloud Management is really focused on managing your cloud experience across hybrid, on-prem, native, and kind of giving you a single control plane for that. And it's been particularly interesting in light of the kind of shift in DevSecOps we've seen over time.
So just to be clear, is it available now through both Cloud Packs?
It's available on Cloud Pack for Data today, and we've got a lightweight integration with multi-cloud management, and we're working on building that out further over the rest of the year. Yeah.
Awesome. And how do you get feedback for that from Cloud Pack customers, or the direction that they're interested in how you're taking it?
So great question. So today we are soliciting feedback kind of through our kind of customer relationships with our user base, but we're planning on making a user oriented roadmap available so that we can get kind of external feedback on our roadmap and get a healthy sense of kind of prioritization, or rather validation for prioritization from users and from organizations.
Great, thanks, Morgan. All right, going back to some of the questions in the chat. Bob asked, do you see any comment? Oh, we already covered the Open Data Hub. All right, so William asked, is Watson AIOps supported on OCP4? We did cover that. So a good question is can you deploy it directly into OpenShift? James, you were talking about that. You can, as outside of Cloud Packs, or is that a no?
Today it's Cloud Packs only, yeah.
Okay. So then the answer to, does it use continuous deployment for updates on OCP? It would follow the Cloud Pack model for continuous updates, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Great question, William. All right, William asked another one. Can the AIOps compare events to previous events and suggest actions based on previous experience? Actions, good or bad, etc.
This is a great question. So the way I'm going to kind of use this to talk about how we approach training a bit more generally. So the way we approach training is we provide some models out of the box that focus on events, focus on logs and kind of correlation across these different data sources. And then over time, with use and kind of training data from our clients, we continue to train those models over time. What we have found in some of our POCs and other work is that there's so much heterogeneity between different client environments that it would be very difficult to have kind of one out-of-the-box model to rule them all and have that be top-down updated. What instead makes a lot of sense is to kind of start off with a set of base models, kind of an ensemble of base models, and then refine those based on a particular application or implementation that's relevant to what's needed really on the ground. So to your specific question, yes, our Watson AIOps is able to be trained over time using kind of past events to do that training. That's exactly right.
Yeah, there's some. I know I've heard some of the folks on our team talk about entity linking, where they start, essentially that's matching up some of the elements that could be in the logs or could be in alerts or events, and making connections across those, across different source types, to form an entity. And much like Morgan was just saying, that then feeds the model, and it starts learning from there. So some of it is fluid. Some of it will look to teach the model in a supervised way, but some of it can be arrived at in unsupervised. I see the question about the vertical. It's pretty horizontally applicable, but what we see are interests so far, right? It's early days, but typical of where IBM has seen a lot of traction, right, is in the financial services, in retail, across different government types of public areas, as well as in telecommunications. So those are the big ones that get a lot of attention. It's not limited to that, because it's really a matter of, you have operations teams that are modernizing and trying to do more with less, which is pretty much everybody. It's just a matter of, well, how severe are the problems if they don't do this? Because the way things are changing, as Morgan mentioned a lot through his presentation, it's really unsustainable to be so manually reliant when things go wrong. In your responses, your investigation, your triage, and diagnosis, and ultimately getting to resolution, the market is still heavily reliant on manual activity. And that's, of course, the biggest cost. And that inherent in that is the biggest delay factor in bringing down the mean time to go through each of those steps and ultimately to resolution. So it's very horizontal. You'll see more budgets, bigger budgets, the larger the company is, of course, and the more severe the impact is when there are those delays. So being able to reduce that time ties right into ROI, and it does require that, the impact has to be big enough for them to make the investment. So it's not necessarily for super small types of companies where they can just yell across the room and fix a problem, be agile, and be on the fly. There's all kinds of ways they could approach it, but it's definitely tough. It's definitely a big payoff for big banks, big retail organizations that just have a lot of complexity, and they've got a lot of tools that they've been throwing at this age-old set of problems that are just getting more exacerbated as the technology changes. So that's where the opportunities lie.
So William asked a follow-up question to that, are there a list of COTS and off-the-shelf integrations already? Do your customers write a lot of integrations, or how many out-of-the-box integrations do you do?
Yeah, Morgan, I can start with that one, and then you can chime in if you want. So we have a mix between some of the traditional capabilities that we've had in the market for a very long time, along with some very new AI capabilities that come from IBM Research and from Watson. So for the integrations that we've had on the more traditional side, we've got thousands of pre-built ways of bringing in that event and alert data. We've got pre-built ways of bringing in performance metrics from different types of sources, and these are, you think, the prevalent monitors, the prevalent devices, and the parts of the resources in the infrastructure, and also at the application layer, which typically comes through monitors, but could be some performance metrics that we can pull from directly from the source. But those are all, there's a huge library of those out of the box that are all part of this. And then with the newer pieces, we've got sources like LogDNA. Humio is on the way to bring in the logs, and there's some generic ways of bringing that in, as well as on the natural language front. We've got some pre-built integrations with ServiceNow, some of the more prevalent service desks, and looking at a way for making it easier to bring those in on the fly. But that's where, depending on how you're going to leverage that, those integrations, that's where there could be some more custom-based methods for bespoke type sources. Anything you want to add, Morgan?
No, I think that's a really valuable answer. I would just call out, we've got some great partners as well that we've been working with, and they've been great. Humio, for example, has been fantastic with logs as a partner for us. So
yeah, and then there's integrations also. I mean, I'm referring to mostly inbound type of integrations, but there's integrations also out of the box for outbound or collaborative type of sharing, exporting the information to varying degrees. So you saw the built-in capabilities of exposing everything through Slack. Microsoft Teams is next up, and there's plans to make it headless so that it could just be exposed however it makes sense, and that's on the roadmap.
What's the most common integration that you're being asked for that you don't have yet?
I would say Splunk. So we've got ways we have Splunk integrations, pull in events from Splunk, to pull in lots of different information from Splunk. That's looking at more of the structured data that we talked about. It's bringing the logs in out of the box. That's something that is one of the priority items. What else, Morgan? What else would we say comes up a lot?
I would say Splunk is definitely a major one. I think what we're also looking at is how we can get more sophisticated integrations with some of our existing tooling. So, for example, we have a very lightweight integration with Humio, with LogDNA, and a couple other vendors in the space. And we're looking at ways that we can get more sophisticated outputs, more rich kind of two-way connectivity between those tools.
So what are the most common use cases also that how your customers are using the Watson AIOps, whether it's through Cloud Pack for data, Cloud Pack for multi-cloud management?
I would say that our primary kind of use case or jumping off point is incident management kind of writ large, and then event grouping or entity linking specifically within that. That's been a really kind of compelling starting point, particularly as James kind of mentioned, a lot of the users we have today are particularly large firms. Their data are often siloed between different departments, and so the proposition of being able to tie together those different investments has been compelling.
Yeah, that's definitely a key. And what we're seeing is traditionally a lot of these bigger companies would operate in a central IT ops manner, right, where they have a central IT operations group. That's still there pretty predominantly, but I guess I should say, and it's being coupled with, or where there's a lot of proliferation of site reliability engineering teams that may or may not be part of that central IT operations group. They may be part of an application group or part of a development team, as you guys are probably aware of, and different DevSecOps type of methodologies, right? Those are bringing different people to this picture which didn't traditionally exist, and so that's exacerbating the silos that Morgan mentioned, right? Where you got different people that have different areas of focus or different things they care about or have expertise in. So they can't be experts. You don't want to have them be super knowledgeable about everything going on in the infrastructure if all they care about is their set of apps, right? Or you don't, vice versa, you don't want someone being so siloed that all they care about is one part or one set of resources in the infrastructure and not have line of sight into how everything else gets impacted. So it's a bit of a balancing act that a lot of companies are facing. And that brings up a lot of newer use cases that just really proliferate some of the traditional ones that were coming from the central operations teams.
Thank you. And since we have Tushar here, Tushar, I was wondering if you could jump in, and what are the use cases that our Red Hat customers are asking for most frequently? It's a two-parter, because also for the platform, what are the most common use cases? How are we using AIOps?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, in general, OpenShift and Kubernetes, we are trying to, what I would call, we're on a journey to create self-healing, clusters, right? To that end, in Kubernetes, obviously for applications, it has built a lot of these self-healing characteristics. I mean, if you think about replicas and how do you build a high availability, but also for the underlying platform itself, especially with OpenShift 4, the use of operators, the operator lifecycle management, we added a lot of capabilities that create the tooling towards that. And a simple example of that is how do you scale OpenShift cluster itself and add up new worker nodes, or scale up and scale down worker nodes in response to, for example, some of the things that Morgan was saying here, right? Like, for example, one of the common things that we had all observed really was, even in OpenShift 3, was the idea that at some point we run out of capacity, and if because of whatever external reasons, we have to increase the number. If there is no underlying capacity in the infrastructure, then how do you add that? So those some of the, so we are on that journey. Long story short, there are other interesting things. For example, what happens after you have put a workload or a set of workloads on a cluster? How do you kind of re-optimize after some time, etc. But I think the more important part really is the feedback part, which is the second part of your question, which is AIOps in general. So, we have built capabilities within OpenShift to report metrics. I mean, Morgan was showing on that slide, for example, that, there is, AIOps heavily relies on structured and unstructured data, both in terms of metrics and logs. And so we, with the use of what we call cluster monitoring and using Prometheus, we can export both raw Prometheus metrics as well as of the system of applications, but also of alerts, and then we can export logs to external systems using various APIs. So that then can be consumed by what's in AIOps, for example, and then they can provide the necessary insights. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Let me kind of mute these notifications. So the other part of it really is talking about Slack. That's the downside of too many alerts. Now, so the other side of it was, the other interesting thing that we added with OpenShift 4 is, and we talked about Data Hub previously, but we also collect a lot of these metrics so that we can provide additional insights to our customers. And one of the biggest one really is, in trying to decide in trying to decide that upgrades and updates are much more reliable, we actually monitor both the install and upgrade of OpenShift clusters through this telemetry data. And then based on those insights, we are able to then declare, or we are able to know some edges that there was no way for us to know, right? Like, let's say 80-90% of upgrades are fine and updates are fine, but there are always this 10-15%. And I'm just using some number. There's always a very small subset which I would constitute as edges which there was no way for our testing to get to completely cover. And so those are the things that you can uncover through this tooling that we have built. So it's basically telemetry reporting, how, for example, upgrades are going, and then the service called the update service, then monitoring it and taking and only allowing those updates that are considered safe. So that's kind of one way in which we are using AIOps. The other one I said earlier was, we, for example, internally with the Data Hub service, we collect logs and we try to improve product experiences. That's the second way. What am I missing? And the third one really is, I think, and this is, I think, the new frontier, and a question for Morgan and James also is, we talked about kind of AI ops and operational, how do you do something, but also there is, the question of, metering, right? Like we have a metering operator now, and the same Prometheus metrics that I mentioned earlier can now be stored in a database, and then you can query it for reports like how much application, how much did an application of CPU and memory did it use, etc., and analyze long-term trends, and are they those kinds of things. I was wondering if that's within the purview and scope of what IBM Watson AIOps is doing as well. So I'll hand it back to you.
Sure, and James, you may, if you want to jump in, feel free. But we cover I had a slide up earlier, kind of highlighting some of the I would say kind of traditional, more structured data sources, and then the unstructured data sources. IBM has a number of products, and included in the Watson AIOps portfolio are solutions for that event, metric, and topology monitoring capability. And so that's part of the synergy that we bring to our clients. We can both address kind of use cases on those fronts immediately, or we can work with their existing infrastructure to provide this AI overlay. I don't know, James, if you want to add anything to that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, on the structured data front, this is where our bread and butter has been for quite some time, right? And so you think about event and alert information that typically, in a data store somewhere in a database and coming from a monitor, even if it's coming from the devices or the pieces of parts of the infrastructure at the network, down to the network level, it's kind of like old hat type stuff we've been able to do for decades. And that's been refined, of course, and has evolved with the market as the technology changes. That's really rich set of data. And in recent years, we've been helping clients analyze that data in a more automated way so that it's just not overwhelming them and becoming part of the problem. There's a lot of, when you start looking at this space, there's a lot of terms like alert fatigue and, being inundated with noise, they call it operational noise. And it's just, you start to have too many tools, too many monitors that everyone has their favorite monitor. And then you start having this proliferation that starts to get over beyond where they can handle it, or to the point where you have some teams that are getting a good feel for their area, but you don't have a good feel for the big picture, like we talked about before. So that's been our expertise, and we've been a manager of managers of sorts to pull in data from all these places that are relevant, throw out in an automated way all that noise, all the duplicates, by automatically deduplicating it, filtering it in different ways based on certain criteria. That's the traditional way, and that's really very achievable and pragmatic when it comes to structured data. What's been elusive and what has been not so pragmatic over the years, but definitely a lot of opportunity for much deeper levels of insight, is to pull in this unstructured data, or there's semi-structured data and unstructured, and that's more unruly. It's less refined, right? Especially the unstructured data could be generated in a way or created in a way that's not uniform, of course. And so that's where relying on the AI capabilities to start to link those entities and start to identify, well, here's where you have information that can be matched up because it's clean enough, where things are just typically part of that alert or part of that natural language that might be in a service ticket or part of that log, right? And then here's where there's nothing on the plans that can make sense out of it because it's just messy data. And if you just, change some of your behaviors or change some of the way that you kick out some of this information, then the AI tool would pick up on it. And you could start to feed the models and learn from there. So there's kind of an evolution that's starting to happen on that front with the unstructured data that it just didn't even make sense to tackle before. It was just kind of a thing to joke about. But we used to joke years ago about, oh, it'd be nice to bring in Twitter information when people were complaining about your application, wouldn't it? And everyone would laugh and joke. And well, actually, now that you can do that kind of stuff, right? It's oversimplifying it, but there's a lot of potential there. So when you're in the thick of a reactive situation with a high severity set of incidents that are happening, and you're trying to huddle together to understand what one thing means that somebody might know about, and another thing, that somebody else might know about. That's what really starts all the delays. That's what starts all the. It could even lead you down the wrong path, and that's a traditional set of challenges that can now be rectified much easier if you have a way of syncing all this stuff up automatically, and you're not having to have people go through that triage.
Thank you. Morgan, do you have anything to add to that?
No, James is the master. There we are.
Was there anything else that we missed here on the chat?
So we have a question. So James, you mentioned don't silo the talent. Can you expound on that? We have.
Did I say that? Okay. Yeah, I would say definitely from a opportunity standpoint, it's not. I mean, there's some things where the budgets are going to be. People are more willing to throw money at things like this. I think maybe that's more in the context of, all right, if you have domain expertise and if you have application expertise, you want to be able to leverage that without creating disruption. So before, you'd have maybe some people in operations that were the traditional level 1, level 2 type of operations teams, and they would get these incidents, looking at their console in the data center, and depending on what their skill set was, they would either handle it, do some more triage, or roll it up and escalate it. And that's typical. And lots of times you'd have people escalating things left and right to the point where you have level 3 level people that are just getting everything, right? And so that's been an ongoing problem. Now you have these different people that have development expertise. They know the app the best, so why not tap into that expertise, give them the information they need, have them be part of the solution, and then learn from all of that. And that way you're not having so many people involved, you're learning from that expertise, and then you're creating some automation on how you react.
So I love that you said have them be involved in the solution. I think that's important.
Yeah. yeah. Involved, not threatened. Is like especially an SRE team, right? They have a way they want to work. You don't want to disrupt them. You just want to be able to augment what they do, and that's the feeling you want them leaving when they see this stuff.
Thank you. I know we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much. That was very informative. It was a great demo, and thanks again for joining us, Morgan, James, and Tushar. And for everybody else, remember to join us next week. Next week, we have a technical overview of IBM Cloud Pack for integration. So that'll be great as well. And go to commons.openshift.org. If you're not a Commons member already, please look into that. And as always, go to openshift.tv to see the schedule for all the great things happening. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.